Hello, and welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about Rhode Island and the people and places and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live, that build our communities. Today we're going to talk about some issues that are right in front of our eyes, but we never stop to recognize. We need people who advocate for the environment, and we need people who tell us what's happening, what will happen in 50 years, what happened from the last 25 years, the ways our air quality, our quality of life has changed because of the way we live. We don't want to hear a lot of these things. Sometimes it's not good news. But to start now is the best time to start, and that is good news. So today we're going to be talking to the Sierra Club, and most of us have heard about them because they have beautiful calendars that they send out as a way for us to get interested in their issues. But today we're going to talk to Abel Collins, who's here in Rhode Island as the program manager, and Drew Grand, who is in Massachusetts and working mainly on issues of carbon and coal. And so we welcome you both here. This is going to be a very fast-paced and important conversation for all of us, I'm sure. The Sierra Club was founded by John Muir. I happen to be a great fan of John Muir. I read a book of his writings about this thick not very long ago. And he is an extremely articulate advocate for the earth as it should be, as it is, as it happened, I guess I would say, as it was created. And he was the founder in 1892 with the president at that time. Is that right? Teddy Roosevelt?
Well, Teddy Roosevelt was a great conservationist in his own right, but it really was Muir who founded the organization. And, you know, that was the club's history. We really started out as almost a social organization, getting people out into nature, hiking out in California predominantly, and preserving trails, setting up shelters for people when they're out there hiking, really leading serious outings. And then as time progressed and as we saw our environment begin to be more and more threatened by pollution, Sierra Club really took a much more of an advocacy role in trying to prevent pollution, trying to preserve land, and that's where we're at now. We still do that. We still do the outings here in Rhode Island. We do outings every month, exploring Rhode Island's beautiful scenery, but we also do the advocacy part, trying to cut carbon is our big goal at the national and at the local level. And I don't know if Drew wants to speak to that as well.
So the Sierra Club was founded because Muir had traveled everywhere, especially in the West, through mountain passes that no one else had gone through. I shouldn't say that because probably Native peoples knew how wonderful this land was. But as a white man, he came through, and he then was very struck by the difference that in urban living. And the differences made him realize how important that scenery was and what an incredible legacy it was. So you're continuing that legacy by taking on issues that are tough issues about how we're using our environment now. And that's very, very commendable. I want to know how you both got started in doing this. Drew, what about you?
So I grew up in upstate New York at the foothills of the Adirondacks and along the Hudson River. Early in the 90s, the Hudson River was found to be contaminated with PCBs. It's a carcinogen and a byproduct of General Electric dumping this pollution into the Hudson River for decades. They had mills and factories from Schenectady all the way up to Hudson Falls, and along the way they were pumping this stuff into the river. So throughout the 90s, the big fight in upstate New York was, do we let this carcinogen stay in the river and let it bioaccumulate in fish, and people eat the fish and then get a dosage of PCBs into their body and put their own health at risk? Or do we hold General Electric accountable and ask them to clean up the river and clean up the pollution that they had put into the Hudson River? And for the longest time, I was very interested in this issue and wanted General Electric to get involved in this and clean up the pollution they'd put in there. You know, they had made, for decades, they were making money off of dumping this pollution into a public resource and making people sick all along the river. The unfortunate part is I had no way of knowing how to get involved with that and how to get in that fight and how to hold General Electric accountable. And along the way, I heard about the Sierra Club, became a member, and eventually started working for the club as an organizer. And one of the things that I like to do as an organizer is ask people to get involved, because that's the number one reason why people don't get involved. It's not because they don't care about the issue or because they don't have time, but it's because they don't know how and no one has asked them to be involved. So as an organizer, I want to be able to get out and ask as many people as possible to get involved and give them that opportunity to get involved in these fights, to hold polluters accountable, and to help make sure that we have clean air so that children, whether they're in Holyoke, Massachusetts, or in East Providence or Newport, aren't breathing in air that's been polluted by carbon and sulfur dioxide and forcing them to live with asthma and putting that additional financial burden on families of asthma medication. But making sure that everyone has the opportunity to breathe healthy air, to drink healthy water, and not get afflicted with illnesses because polluters are trying to make money and pushing that burden off of them and onto families.
Okay, so you see big corporations as one of the issues that you need to address, or one of the constituencies that you need to
polluters. It's not so much big corporations, but people who are polluting, big or small. If they're polluting, they're transferring the burden of their business onto families and onto residents. And what we're trying to do is internalize that cost and say, if you want to make money, that's fine. No one's going to say you can't make money, but don't make people sick in order for you to make a profit.
Okay, why don't we start with climate change and the kinds of things that are happening because we're using carbon-based fuels?
Sure. So my backstory is I grew up here in Rhode Island in Matunic, where I still live, actually, and it's a case study in the effects of sea level rise. We've lost over 100 feet of our shoreline in Matunic. The beaches I grew up on, the dunes that I played in as a kid, are gone. They are no more. And every big storm we lose more land, and those are the effects that we're going to be seeing all along the eastern seaboard. Matunic is just really a harbinger of what's to come. Mm-hmm. And I'm living on the same piece of land in Matunic, small farm. I've seen the changes in the climate in terms of, we have a longer growing season, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we do also have new insects that are eating the plants that we grow. New insects are moving north in other parts of the country. There's a pine beetle that's devastating forests in the west. So there are all sorts of different effects of climate change. As the climate warms, we're going to see increasing tick populations that survive through the winter, increasing amounts of Lyme disease, which has afflicted my family greatly. I've had it numerous times. Everybody in my family, even my littlest, have gotten tick bites. So, you're going to see increases in diseases. You're going to see rising sea levels that are eating away at our coast. We're going to see increasing flooding events because there's more moisture in the air. Right now, there's already 5% more water in the air than 100 years ago, and that creates bigger storms. So we're going to see increasing flooding along the lines of what we saw in 2010, where Warwick and Cranston were really hit hard by the flooding in the Patuxent. We just saw in a couple weeks ago the Pawcatuck flooded, and those storms weren't even huge storms. So we're going to see those types of effects as well, and that's just locally. You know, globally, climate change is a much more serious problem for at-risk populations where, you know, in Bangladesh, it's a very low-lying country, hundreds of millions of people are going to be forced to be refugees from the rising waters. In the Arctic, where ice is melting catastrophically, which is causing a lot of that sea level rise, we're seeing the potential for big feedback loops. As the ice goes away, the water is getting warmer in the Arctic, so methane that's trapped underneath what used to be ice covered is escaping, and that's going to accelerate climate change. Similarly, permafrost in the tundra is melting, and that's causing methane to escape. So we're really seeing right now that we're already experiencing climate change, but there's the potential that it could accelerate if all these feedback loops are allowed to kick into gear. So that's why we feel like there's a really urgent need for action right now. Actually, 25 years ago, the need was urgent. Right now, it's critical that we do it for the quality of life of people here in Rhode Island, the quality of life of people around the globe. And fortunately, there are things we can do. There are solutions to the problem. You're right, corporations have a lot of political power in our country right now, so they've been hard at work trying to slow down the changes that we'd like to see.
But what can most of us do? You've just listed huge, overwhelming list of things that are needing immediate attention, and I don't disagree with any of the things you've said. But what can we do? You're doing things because you're trying to educate. But what can the rest of us do? Maybe we should spend some time talking about that. I mean, cut carbon. How do we cut carbon? What kinds of ways can we help to legislate? What kinds of ways can we help to advocate? What kinds of ways can we change our own personal lifestyles?
So there are some immediate things right now. The best thing to do is, you know, if we're talking about carbon pollution, the biggest source of carbon pollution is actually from the energy sector. What a lot of people don't know is that a good portion of the energy in the United States right now is coming from coal, which is the dirtiest source of energy that we have. That coal, a lot of it is coming from West Virginia in the Appalachian area, and they're using practice called mountaintop removal, where what they're actually doing is blowing up the tops of mountains and taking that, what they're calling overburden, and pushing it into stream valleys. So we've seen the destruction of 500 mountains in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia, the destruction of 2,000 miles of stream. If it's not coming from there, it's coming from the Powder River Basin of Wyoming, which is the largest coal field in the United States right now. Here in New England, we have 5 remaining coal plants. There's 1 in Connecticut, 2 in Massachusetts, 1 just over the border from Rhode Island in Somerset, which is the Britton Point plant, which is actually the largest in New England. There's 1 in Holyoke, and then there's 2 in New Hampshire. If we can call it, the good news is that coal that's being burned in those plants in Massachusetts isn't coming from mountaintop removal. It's actually coming from Colombia in South America. And the reason they're doing that is that coal has a lower sulfur content in it. So those coal plants will purchase the coal from Colombia, burn it here, and say they lowered emissions. They get to sound like they're doing something good, but in reality, they're still burning coal. They're still putting a lot of pollution up into the air, and that's still pollution that people are breathing in and getting sick from. So one of the things we can do here is decrease the amount of energy that we're using. Get a home energy audit, get an energy audit for your business, turn the lights off when you're not in the room, but decreasing the energy and investing in energy efficiency is the most effective way to do that. For every dollar that we invest in insulation, in lowering our lighting costs, we see a $7 return. So there's a huge return both for our personal use and for our economy. Well, I just put insulation in my attic this year. and we're familiar with the polar vortex. We're
Yes,
familiar.
definitely.
Yeah, it sounds all right. So we know about those freezing temperatures. I filled my oil tank once this year, compared to 3 times last year. Wow. So I spent $300 on installation, and I saved 2 tanks of oil. That's the return that we're talking about, and that's where energy efficiency returns that money back into the economy. So we can, instead of putting those dollars into energy, we can put them into other things that we'd much rather see our economy being spent on. And it also means if we're burning less oil, if we're burning less coal, it means we're putting up less carbon, which means that that carbon pollution isn't creating asthma like it normally is, which means that families don't have to invest money into energy. It also means they don't have to invest money into asthma medication. So it means there's more money there to spend on things that families want to be spending money on.
Okay, so what's happening in Rhode Island?
Yeah, well, there is some good news in Rhode Island. Rhode Island, in terms of the amount of carbon that citizens are putting into the air, Rhode Island is doing the best in the Northeast, which is good. The Northeast in general does pretty well. We're hoping that we can set stronger goals, so Rhode Islanders are doing even more of their part to reduce carbon emissions. We're fighting to create incentives for renewable energy installations. We've got a distributed generation growth program, which is a bill at the State House. We've got a renewable energy tax credit bill, and we've got the Resilient Rhode Island Act that we're all working on to really create further momentum for making sure that the electricity that we do have to use is coming from clean energy sources. We've been advocating for offshore wind to go in. We think that this is a great opportunity for the Rhode Island economy to really be the hub of the offshore wind industry that is to come. And it is the future of America.
You're talking about putting something huge in the water and catching the wind.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Well, I can't call those windmills somehow, but anyway.
Turbines.
Turbines.
Yeah.
They've met with great success in Europe, and we anticipate the wind resources off the coast of.
It must be huge.
They are huge. It's a great resource that we have, and it's clean, and it's renewable, and it's predictable, and we can make great use of it. So these are all ways that we can transition to the clean energy economy that we really need to see to get to the zero carbon level.
How about everyone having solar receptors?
So yeah, that's what I'm talking about with the distributed generation program. We've had it in place in Rhode Island for about 3 years now, and we've seen some pretty big commercial projects. There's one in East Providence that was put on top of an old landfill. That's the biggest one in Rhode Island. There's some going into Quonset Point. It's also incentivizing projects like a methane digester down in Quonset Point as well. And this new iteration of the program is going to expand its size by 4 times and make it available to residential development. And then if we can get this residential renewable energy tax credit passed, that gives people a quicker payback period on these systems. And they're all good investments, but it takes a significant upfront capital cost, and that's what stops a lot of people from putting those solar panels on their houses.
You have on your website a quite lengthy discussion of public transportation. It's very frustrating to live in Rhode Island and not be able to get easily to Boston, for example. I tried to do it on a schedule the other day, and there's just no schedule that matched my schedule.
I do it nearly every day, Juliana.
And so you're having to constantly deal with this problem.
Yep. I live in Cumberland. As you know, my office is in Boston. 3 to 5 days a week, I get on the commuter line in Attleboro, take it up. I'm usually on the 7:50 or the 8:30 train. So hopefully someday I can catch you there, and then in the evening I'm taking either the 5:10 or the 5:40 on my way back home at night.
So you know that the irregularity of the schedule, or at least the schedule, isn't necessarily what people need. And yet there's no way to get from here to Portland, Maine easily, for example. It makes no sense to me because I've just come from Europe. I just had a little bit of vacation. and the train service there is absolutely stellar. Very clean trains, huge windows, lots of every 10 minutes in cities, they're running.
I know about your frustration with getting to Portland, Maine. We have in the Northeast corridor, which is a fantastic resource, getting from Washington to Philadelphia to New York to Boston. But to get to Portland, Maine, we've got that 3-block space in Boston. That's the missing link there. And it's the north-south rail link that we need. Right now, if you want to get from Providence to Portland, you got to get out in Providence, take the train to Back Bay, get off at Back Bay, take the Orange Line from Back Bay to North Station, and get on another Amtrak up to Portland. But if we had that link, the north-south rail link in between,
makes no sense.
It would be a straight shot right up to Portland.
And often trains stop and buses leave 15 minutes before, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's not going to be your problem, but that is the public's problem. And public transportation is not a way of life for us, and it should be.
And just like this, it's another way of removing carbon from the air. Because of that missing link in Boston, we have thousands of people taking cars up through Boston, through the highways, and putting emissions up into the air, putting pollution up into the air because of that missing link. Whereas if we had that public resource, we could get people on a train directly to Maine and through Boston.
Yeah, and if I could, in Rhode Island, one of our issues has been public transit advocacy. Rhode Island's sort of a unique case. Energy isn't actually the largest source of carbon emissions for Rhode Island. It's the transportation sector. And so for us, the lowest hanging fruit in terms of reducing emissions, we believe, is by increasing access to public transit, really making RIPTA the world-class transit system that it could and should be, given our size and density of population, the way it's spread out. So we've been advocating for that for a decade or more. And this year there have been some rumblings that transit will get some new financing. The problem is that most of the money it gets to run its bus fleet is generated by the gas tax. So as cars get more efficient, as people take transit more, as people are,
it will have to be funded in a different way.
Right. So yeah, it's funded in a backward way. We're trying to deal with that by all means. And we need help to make it happen. So going back to where we started in this conversation, Sierra Club is a democratically run organization. We're driven by our volunteer members. So join the club. You don't have to join the club to get active in the campaigns we're running. We have action alerts. You can come to the hearings that we try to inform the public about that are going on at the State House or around the state on these critical issues to transition to that clean energy economy. And it really is, like I said, it's volunteer driven. So we have volunteers in Rhode Island, for instance. We have a great climate change coordinator, Pete Galvin, who wrote a whole primer. He's been attending hearings, talking to legislators about all the research he's done, trying to get people aware of it. We have another volunteer, Barry Schiller, who you might have met here or there, who knows the transportation world back and forward. He sits on the Transportation Advisory Committee for the Sierra Club. So these are the types of opportunities getting involved with the club can do. We can put you in touch with policymakers and really allow your voice to be carried that much farther. That's what we want to do as a club. Empower people, let your voice be heard, and hopefully see that good policy change.
Are you linking with universities, for example? Are you linking with other organizations that could add clout to what you're saying?
Oh, yes, certainly. Rhode Island in particular, from what I've experienced in the environmental world, has a very close-knit environmental community. We're part of the Environment Council of Rhode Island. I've been working closely over the past year with the Coastal Resources Management Council, which has been putting on a beach SAMP. This is their Special Area Management Plan, which is SAMP, trying to get word out about the dangers of sea level rise to Rhode Island communities. So we try to promote what they're doing as well, help their message get out. And you can go to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of information online. Go to our website to find out what we're doing. We definitely try to work with everybody in Rhode Island.
Whoever you can.
Yeah.
This past few months, I've heard about the 20,000 tons of salt that has been put on the roads, and I keep wondering where that's going and how it's affecting Narragansett Bay, which to me is an unbelievable treasure that's being that's trying to be. People are trying to care for it, but we're not doing enough. Apparently, even just a few in the earliest colonial times, even just a few pigs and cows on the islands changed the quality of the water, and so it really concerns me that we're putting all this salt into the water systems. I don't know what else we could use besides salt, but and this probably isn't the Sierra Club's problem, but
Well,
caring
yeah,
for the water for the Narragansett Bay is very, very important to the life of Rhode Island.
yeah, so we have some great partners in the environmental world who are working on the health of the bay. Save the Bay, of course, Clean Water Action, and a number of other organizations. So we work with them to help support them. One of the initiatives, and it's not specific to salt, of course, but to all the runoff that we see off our roadways, we need to do a better job of managing our stormwater, which is the water that's coming off these paved areas. And so I think the next big issue for the environmental world in Rhode Island is going to be forming a stormwater coalition. And one of the things that's going to help that initiative greatly is getting the Resilient Rhode Island Act passed, which not only has that goal of cutting emissions locally, setting really strong standards, 85% reductions by 2050, but it also has climate adaptation. So this deals with how communities are going to prepare for the inevitable realities of climate change. And part of that's going to be stormwater mitigation. Part of that's going to be, trying to acquire open space where there's floodplains or danger from rising seas, creating heat islands in urban areas so people have a refuge to go to when it gets really hot, so planting shade trees in the urban areas. Really, this is a comprehensive climate bill, and
It's multifaceted. I mean, it's so complex and so interconnected, isn't it? Having trees and having water collection are somehow related, and
it's true. The climate is a big thing. It's a system, and we have to think of it as something we're all part of. And people try to debate whether climate change is here and whether it's causing this or that storm, but it's really more an issue of it's affecting everything at this point, and we need to change our systems of doing things to adapt well and prepare accordingly. And I try to use this quote whenever I go and speak to people. It's a Ben Franklin quote. It's by failing to prepare, we're preparing to fail. And I think we need to be doing a better job of preparing.
I want to thank you both for being here. I know there must be something else you want to say, but we need to stop. And I don't know what you can do, but join the Sierra Club, keep online, watch for what's happening, go to the events that you're planning, go to the lectures. Drew Grand and Abel Collins, thank you so much for being here and for your passion for the earth. And I hope that it pays off in spades. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
And thank you for watching Good News Rhode Island. We hope that you have good news in your neighborhood, and we're sure you're helping to make it.